Hey, 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 happy Sunday. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Today, you will see only me. Well, you won't see only me, but hosting the show today is only me. Um, Victor is taking some time off with the family, taking a little vacation time. So, um, happy vacation to them. Hope they enjoy their time out there and get a little time off. This stuff it takes a little effort to do and a little bit of free time. Oh, hold on one second. Let me start something real quick. All right. Sorry, I just had to start the Twitter Spaces as well, or the X Spaces, whatever you want to call it. We're simultaneously streaming on there as well, separately. So if you're on Twitter/X and you want to come hang out over there and drop some comments, I may or may not see them because I'm focused on the live stream here on the other side. But if you want to come hang out in there, if that's a little bit easier, and you can just put it in your pocket and put your headphones on, you can do that as well. So that's another option. We're trying to put in as many options as we can, get out to as many platforms as we can at one time, and it's always tricky. So just trying to figure it all out. But yeah, this past week has been a little bit busy. I do have I believe it's the finished product. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. But we were trying to get the book out and um, trying to get the book out for everybody and get it put together. I can't pull it up right now. I should have had it pulled up beforehand. Look at me with my poor planning skills. But anyways, I went through the last revision, did some updates, updated the cover a little bit as well. And I just got to get Victor to give me the thumbs up that everything's good, all the edits that we've done, and then we're going to get that pushed out. So if you're on the email list in the military retirement group in Facebook, you can get on that email list and you will be the first to receive it. And then once that's done, we're going to roll out publicly to the rest of the Facebook group that doesn't have it, of course. And then once we get done with that, then we'll roll it out to the website. My intention is to sit down and record an audio version of it as well, because I know some people read books, audio books as well. And I myself read a lot of books, audiobook, versus sitting down and reading the book on Kindle or reading a physical copy of the book. I mean, there's different ways to consume books. And some of the purists will tell you that the only books that matter are the ones that are made of paper. I don't 100% agree with that, but yeah, that's the intent, is to sit down once we get everything finalized, which should be this week, basically. We were just going back and forth, making final edits, making sure all of the links in the book work and everything looks like it makes sense and it flows smoothly. And we've shortened it a little bit. So we've tried to make it as concise as possible, just a little pocketbook thing that you can carry around in your phone as a PDF. And not only to give you some tips and tricks and have some quick links to things, but also to give you some good backup information before you start going down that path of transitioning out of the military. So just some things to think about. Again, it's not this all-encompassing, like step-by-step guide by any means, just something quick and easy to read through real quick, get some good ideas, some things to think about when you're getting ready to transition out. And then, as time goes on, we'll probably update the book. It's definitely editable, so we can update it and revise it. We may or may not push it out to Amazon Kindle for free download, or maybe a 99-cent download. I don't know. Just to cover the cost of the book and cover the the expenses and the time and effort that we put into it. But really, it should be ultimately free for everybody. And also want to make the audio version of it. So if you want to listen to it on Audible real quick for 20 or 30 minutes or however long it ends up having to be, but that's the intent for that. What else is going on? We've got a lot of stuff going on. We're still pushing to get the viewership and subscribership up to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you haven't subscribed on YouTube and you enjoy what we're doing, you want to support what we're doing and support the show, go ahead and hit the subscribe button on YouTube. If you want to find us on the other platforms, whether it's Spotify or Apple, or if you want to come join us on the Facebook group, the Military Retirement Group, which is right here above my head. Excuse me. You can come join us and hang out there as well. Any way you want to support us, we love all the support that everyone's given us so far, and we're just continuing to push and push and push so that we can expand what we're doing, so we can get better information out, so we can bring better guests on the show, get some more information from a wider net of people out there, and also some interviews that we do with retirees along the way. We just dropped one this week. Mr. Terrones, he's on the podcast, Wayne Terrones. We just dropped that interview on Friday. So that one's live and up and out there on all the places if you want to check that out. It's a really good interview, interesting interview. Is E9 that retired after 30 years of military service in the USMC. And just really fun conversation that we had. Talked a lot about mental health, about holistic health, taking care of yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, and all those things, as well as all kinds of other things that we talk about in the podcast. So that was a good one. And today I have with me Mr. Joey Laswell, and me and Joey linked up about 2 weeks ago. He's starting to do some podcast stuff. He's doing some live broadcasts on the radio, and he is a financial social worker, which basically means financial expert, or at least certified financial expert on the social work side of the house. We're going to dig into that a little bit and see what he has to say and talk about all things finances and probably a bunch of other stuff. So let me go ahead and bring him up on the stage. What's going on, Joey?
Hey, John, can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Awesome. I'm just glad. I'm excited to be here. Been going down the rabbit hole of you guys' content lately, and just really love. I just love the nuanced conversations that you guys have. You guys, are talking about relevant things to military retirees and the military community. And as soon as I saw you guys' stuff, I was like, yes, I want to be a part of these team of people, so just honored to be here, and excited to talk finances or whatever other transition things that we could talk about. But yeah, just to thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, absolutely. It's the whole point, is to try to expand the community, not only the community of people who are maybe listening or joining in on the conversations on Facebook or sending us messages, or even if you're in the live stream right now today, you can send messages live to myself and Joey, and we can answer them here live as well as after the fact. That's the beauty of it. So not only that, but just gathering more information, gathering more resources. It seems like there's not enough lists of resources out there for the masses to, and that sounds kind of silly because there are tons of resources out there, but not everybody knows about all the resources out there. And that's one of the main things, is just to get that information out, and then to introduce new people to our community, expand the word of mouth about the Military Retirement Podcast. That's why we're going to Atlanta in the end of September for the Military Influencer Conference, so we can just hang out, network, what we practice, what we preach, right? We hang out, we network, we meet people, we talk with people, we make some bonds and make some friends along the way, and really just set ourselves up to then continue on our mission and expand and expand and expand as we go. So yeah, thank you for coming on, man. It's really nice. I know the scheduling was a little bit crazy, and I know you got a lot of stuff going on yourself, but thank you for taking the time today.
Yeah, of course. Just like I said, I really resonate with the idea of creating a sense of community. Like, there's a lot of disparate veteran communities out there right now, and I'm active on a lot of them. There's the millennial veterans group. There's I Got Your Six. There's all kinds of Facebook groups for veterans and resources, but they're kind of hit or miss. But yeah, I think the one thing I've noticed is that there's a lot of passion out there to help veterans, but it's all just kind of it's all over the place, But yeah, by communicating with each other and coordinating, collaborating, I think we could really, help more veterans that way. So I really I really resonate with this sense of, it's like a continuation of our military mission, but as veterans, like we can still help the people that are in the middle of their transition or about to transition. And we're basically like, I like to think of it as like we're future travelers. We've been into the future that these people are about to face, and we can give them some guidance. We can give them some tips and maybe some kind words and wisdom that we've learned along the way. And we're not going to have all the answers, um, but yeah, I really, and that's part of the reason as a social worker, we're looking at the micro, which is, the one-on-one, the meso is like the community side. And then the macro is like the societal cultural level of things, So since I've only been a social worker for less than a year, but I really resonated with the idea of, helping people at the one-on-one level, the community level, and then and beyond. So I think that there's definitely a lot of work to be done to help veterans. And, like there's just a lot of cool platforms out there, and I'm just excited yeah, all of us work together if we can.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, like, firstly, when you just as out of curiosity, because I'm just
Mhm.
really, really curious to get feedback on a lot of the things that we do, and not because I want to get any kind of validation for it. Like, I know what we're doing is important, and I know
Right.
it's for a higher purpose. That's the whole reason to do it, because it's bigger than myself, it's bigger than Victor, it's bigger than any of us, really.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious to hear your like initial thoughts on when you ran across the podcast, or if you came across like the YouTube channel or something like that. Like, what was some of your first thoughts?
The first thoughts I had was, where have you guys been this whole time? But yeah, like if I think even though it's the military retirement podcast, I like that you guys are talking about the transition and, like post transition as well. So it's not just a retirement podcast. So that was what I really, because initially I was like, oh well, military retirement, that's not really going to be for me. But then I started watching and looking at your content, and I was like, oh no, there's actually something here for transitioning. Like me, because I was 14 years almost 14 and so I didn't do the retiree route, but you know I was in long enough to basically feel like a retiree when I was transitioning, because I'd invested a lot of time into the military. So if I had access to you guys' content when I was transitioning, I think it would have made me, it would have just helped me in a lot of different ways, not just the practical side, but like the mental side. I think I like how you guys are talking about the mental and emotional side of the transition. So that's definitely my gut reaction was, man, I wish I had this 4 or 5 years ago when I was transitioning. But hey, you guys are here, and I'm like, okay, how do I get your guys' content out there to more people? So yeah, I'm excited about that.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. That's really helpful. It's almost like I need to rebrand again to the military, getting out of the military podcast. I don't know. I don't want to rebrand again. It sucked. The
Yeah.
first time sucked. The second time sucked, and this last time actually sucked a lot too. But it's hard, man. It's hard
Yeah.
to, because I think about that. When I first started, it was literally just me literally trying to vlog my way through my retirement, and that didn't work
Mhm.
out. And at the time, it was retired.army, which was a very novel and unique uh,
Yeah.
URL for the web, and it was a novel and unique name. And I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of catchy and it's kind of nice, and I think
Mhm.
it's cool. But what I think doesn't matter. It's what everybody else thinks when they see it and when they hear it.
Right.
And what they associate with when they hear like retired out army. What does that mean? Oh, okay,
Mhm.
he's talking to just people who are retiring from the army, or something along that path.
Yeah.
Now we're at the iteration of the military retirement podcast, which I think is close.
Mhm.
But I agree. I don't think we're hitting it right on the head. But then I guess maybe in a while it won't really matter, and maybe enough people will be on board and enough people will be
Mhm.
listening and watching to kind of set that narrative straight for people when they ask the
Yeah.
question, hopefully.
Mhm.
So, because I
Yeah.
really don't want to rebrand again.
I hear you. I mean, I understand from just, being new in the podcast space. I know that there's rebranding is almost not a guaranteed, but then, like you start off with initial idea, and then it evolves, and then, like things change, and,
Yeah.
so I get that part of it. But yeah, technically, when I started, I was gonna make a podcast. So part of my origin story for my podcast was the VA sent out an email back in January 30th, and I still remember the date. But they
Mhm.
sent out an email for military broadcast radio. They're basically saying, "Oh, well, this nonprofit will help you create a podcast." And it was just like one of those email, you get those VA emails and you just kind of skim through
Oh
them,
yeah.
or, like I was just like, oh, okay. I saw that and I was like, oh, that's actually pretty cool. I want to do that, and I just followed the prompts. I went to their website and I was like, let's do this, and that was back in January or end of January. Um, but in the process, I was actually trying to come up with a social work podcast. I was literally just like, I'm a social worker now. I want to, there's a space for, for content creation in the social work space. So I was like, yeah, I want to do something like that. And I was going to try to niche down and do all that, niching. And I think I niched down a little too much, because I was going to be like a medical social worker podcast, because, in the social work space, medical social work is kind of a specialty and, like, has
Mhm.
some interest to it. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. And then that just didn't really pan out, and then I had to transition to, well, I was like, I got my financial social work certification. So then I was going to be the financial social worker. That was going to be my podcast. And then I actually had to coordinate with the Center for Financial Social Work where I got my certification. And then they were like, yeah, actually, you can't really use that name. That's like a trademark name, So I was like, oh, well, I got to rebrand, before I even truly launched.
Right.
This is all in the early stages. And then the fire social worker just kind of, because I've been interested in fire, financial independence, retire early. That's kind of a trending thing. I've been in the space for almost 10 years. And then I just was like, well, I'm interested in fire. I'm a social worker. Maybe I can be, basically, I was thinking I could document reaching FI as a social worker. That was kind of like the origin. So it just kind of, that's how it happened. It was not really any like bolt of lightning or anything like that. It just kind of happened. But yeah, it's been a journey for sure. And I think what I've learned initially was like, okay, I'm looking at tunnel vision of like, okay, this is what I'm looking at. And then now, as I'm networking, as I'm meeting people, I'm like, whoa, there's a lot more to be done here, because initially I was gonna just become a podcast on the side and then maybe do financial coaching. But then I got interested in advocacy and literacy, financial literacy, and helping veterans with their finances, and it just kind of it's kind of taking on a whole different um, undertaking. But uh, yeah, it's been a journey for sure, and it sounds like you've been on your own journey, and it's just part of the space, I think. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as you peel back the onion a little bit, you start to see like the layers of depth, and then also as you're trying to come up and figure out and create. Luckily, we don't have to like think of novel things to say because we're talking about a
Mhm.
topic that's pretty evergreen. Like it's pretty much just the same questions over and over and over and over. But the information changes really, really fast, right? So, well,
Yeah.
maybe not really fast, but it changes pretty quickly and relatively often. So, what ends up happening is we're kind of chasing our tail, trying to keep up with the information that, and
Hmm.
then you look at a bunch of other podcasts and other YouTubers and other people out there on social media that are doing things that are trying to put out information depending on where they fall on the spectrum of things, where they're trying to sell a course, where they're trying to sell like their VA knowledge to get you to
Hmm.
100% and charge
Right.
you,
Hmm.
$17,000 to do it, or
Yeah.
however that works out, or they're giving it away for free. And in your case, you're doing social work, maybe not specifically for veterans, but I think that's part of your holistic like view of things when you're looking at the financial social work. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, because when I got certified in financial social work back in May, I was just like, it was just a confluence of, my passions. Was already interested in personal finance for, like I said, over a decade. I had almost became a financial counselor as I separated I did Skill Bridge, and then I actually got an internship at the Eminent Family Readiness Center, and I was doing an internship as a financial counselor. So I've been on this path as for financial coaching, financial counseling for a while. It's just been a lot of ups and downs and stops and starts. But yeah, when I stumbled upon financial social work, I was just like, this is this is the confluence of everything, like my passion for helping people with their finances, and then like kind of digging into more of the holistic side of personal finance instead of just crunching the numbers. There's a lot more to it than that, and a lot of finances is, there's a psychology there. And with my background in psychology and social work, and just what I've learned over the years from with dealing with personal finances, um there is no one quick fix for it. So I just became really passionate, and I'm still very passionate about just helping people with their finances, and like any way that I can. And I don't know if you've seen it yet, but I do have this financial, kind of like a financial makeover series that I'm doing on my show.
Mhm.
um, and part of this was an idea that I had of just, we have all these fitness makeover shows. We've got, your you've got home makeover shows and things like that, but you don't really see a whole lot of personal finance makeover shows. And so I put out my feelers out there, and I was like, hey, is anyone willing to literally be my uh, case study, if you will, live on air? Basically, we do financial coaching on air, and then people can follow along and kind of witness a hopefully positive financial transformation over time, and just see what is possible with financial coaching and financial social work. And so that was kind of the idea behind it. And so far we've gotten a couple episodes into that. I'm calling it the Fire Boot Camp. So I got a Army recruiter out of Pennsylvania, named Reed Quatez, and he's been a trooper. I think I mentioned it on you guys' last stream. I kind of was using him as a way to engage with you guys, to say, okay, if you guys were 3 years out from retirement as retirees, what advice would you give to Reed? Because I'm not a retiree, so there are things that I have gaps in my knowledge. So that's why I wanted to engage with you guys, and you guys gave really good advice on that. So yeah, it's just something that it was an idea, and I'm in that stage where I'm just throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks,
Mhm.
and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, as I'm networking and learning and growing, I'm seeing, like I said, there's a lot of demand for financial. Just there's like this, people are sponges for financial stuff, but it's the behavioral stuff that usually gets people. So it's a tricky challenge, but it's something that I'm hoping to engage with the community more and more.
Yeah, it seems like everything, right? Not only financial, but if you want to adjust your attitude, or if you want to do anything really, it's just really just boils down to a matter of changing habits. And of course, it takes effort, and it takes persistence, and it takes time, and you'll get knocked back a step or two. Like even this week, just being, transparent with everybody, like even this week I'm having, or actually the last 2 weeks, I'm having some internal issues in the house, and I find myself at
Mm,
times where I'm a little bit angrier than I need to be, or a little bit grumpier than I need to be, or just, I don't know, going through these kind of mood swings. And I guess it's
yeah.
just, as the more veterans I talk to, the more and more I realize, and I hope it's not like this kind of like echo chamber in my brain, because I'm talking to so many veterans and so many people about these things, and they're telling me their stories and their journeys through the military and through retirement. But I feel like it comes back in waves, right? It's
Yeah.
like ebbs and flows over and over. And really, the antidote to all of it is not the antidote, but the way to steer the boat in the right direction is really just habit formation, habit elimination. If you've got bad habits that you want to get rid of to replace with good habits or better habits, and it just ebbs and flows, and it's a constant effort. It's not something you just do and you reach, say, financial freedom,
Right.
and you get the zero balance on your books, and you've paid off all your debt and you have no more credit card debt. It's not like once you hit that pinnacle of success, like everything's smooth sailing from there, right? Because
Yeah.
then things happen, like your transmission dies and you have to
Mhm.
grab, $2,000 out of your savings that you've been
Mhm.
working on for the last 6 or 8 or 12 months, and
Yeah.
now you've just took a big chunk out of that, and now you got to build that back up. So
Mhm.
it's really, I'm curious to know, like, if, like, you're doing this right now in real time with somebody, but and I guess it's for him to get towards retirement in, I guess, 3 years, um, to be basically debt free, hopefully. What does that process kind of look like, or where does somebody actually start? Like, what does day one or day zero look like of that process?
Yeah. So the day zero is really kind of doing an assessment of sorts of like a, just like you do whenever you're doing like a fitness, you got a fitness coach, they might do a baseline session with you, be like, okay, where do you stand? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And just kind of get the whole picture, and that's what I did with him. The first session was really first getting to know him, because I am of the mindset of like, I need to know what motivates you, what drives you, what are your passions, what are your interests, because like I said, the psychology of money is that's where a lot of the behaviors come from, is these motivations, So by learning more about the person, finding out what makes them tick, what are their pain points, and really just getting that financial baseline. So it looked like with him, I asked him, what is your net worth, and he didn't know that, a lot of people don't know that. So that's just like the one of the first things that usually gets recommended, is like, okay, where do I stand right now, and it's just a number. It's not a reflection of your self-worth, it is just a number, but it's a statement, or it's a snapshot in time of where you are right now. So that's usually the first step, is where are you, and then we kind of get into, okay, where do you want to be, because a lot of people don't really think about their financial milestones. They're just going through the everyday motions of finances, because for lack of like, that's what the reality is for a lot of people, is they are going paycheck to paycheck, month to month, just trying to keep their heads above water, whereas other people might be more fortunate enough to have enough money, extra money, to start planning for future things. um, so really, yeah, it comes down to goals, creating goals, establishing goals, and then putting in mechanisms in place to try to reach those goals. So with Reed, like, one of the things, I asked about him, is when it comes to the retirement transition, does he have a money set aside for the transition? And he didn't really have any money set aside intentionally, so we worked with, I just came up with a number. I was like, all right, well, in 3 years, let's say you want to have a cash cushion of $10,000, for your transition. Just a nice round number. There was no a thought behind it. It was just like, okay, let's come up with this number. And then I just did the math. In 3 years, it's 36 months. How much do you have to put away to do that? And a lot of people, they just don't really conceptualize it that way. Like, oh, I'm gonna have to break this down into smaller chunks, so that way it makes it easier, instead of trying to do it all at the last minute. Like maybe the last year, if you're trying to save 10,000, that's going to be a tall order, versus doing it 3 years out. We did the math, and it was like $250 a month for the next 3 years is going to give you 10K. Um, so yeah, he had already started. He'd already had the mechanisms in place to work on, or to have like a savings account. So I was like, all right, well, let's just make this intentional now. this is going to be your transition fund, and then we're going to put 250. I think we discussed 125 a paycheck, and then make it automatic and be done with it. So that was kind of like one of the things that we came up with. And we'll see. We're going to do regular check-ins. We're basically going to do every couple of weekends, check in with him, see what his progress is, and I'm going to be pushing him to, I think he's only got like 3,000 left on his car. That's his only debt. So like once he pays off his car debt, his debt, then we can really start, putting that money towards other things. So that's kind of what it looks like as far as the initial stages. And then it's just going to be iterative after that, being like, okay, we just, because I think he had discussed that he wanted to maybe do homesteading whenever he retired, so I'm like, okay, that's going to require some money, so it's just finding different goals, and then reverse engineering. Okay, in order to get to this goal, we need to do XYZ in reverse. So that's kind of how I perceive it, or how I pursue the that type of financial management. But at the same time, it's with social work, it's all about where is the client right now. So in some ways, I'm not necessarily trying to fix your past mistakes. We're just trying to focus on your present and your future. Now, some people, like there's financial therapy, like they actually are, certified financial therapists. Like they're more clinical, and they actually deal with like financial trauma. Like if you have really bad financial, relationships, they can work through that with you. So there's a lot of different flavors in the financial community. But ultimately, yeah, I think it's more of a personalized decision, and that's basically what I'm advocating for is like personalized financial counseling for all veterans if we can.
Yeah, financial therapy. That's I've never heard of that. I don't know how recent that is. Maybe it's been around forever, but that's an interesting thing to do. I want to dig into it, and I want to kind of preface it with this basically is like my personal relationship with money, with finances, really got intensified about 2021. So it was basically the year that I was retiring, at the beginning of that year, maybe a little bit earlier, like end of 2020. And again, that was also, the height of COVID, basically.
Right. Yeah.
But there was this thing that kind of blew up, and I talked about it a couple times on the when I was recording myself, when I was doing my vlogging stuff, and was talking about taxes and things like that, and how taxes affect different things. And again, I'm not a financial counselor or a financial advisor, so don't take my advice. I don't know what I'm talking about. But basically, the relationship for me with money strengthened when I got into the crypto space, because basically the end of 2020, beginning in 2021, these things came out. Well, they'd been out for a while, but they just hit the mainstream, basically. These things called NFTs. And NFTs, for those of you who don't know, are non-fungible tokens. I even had Victor ask me about a couple of the links that were on the resources page the other day. He's like, "What are these NFT things?" I'm like, they were in one of the shows, so I just threw them up there. But it seems like a very scary word. Like when you say NFT, people are like they cringe a little bit. It's really weird. But interestingly enough, the underlying technology of it basically is, fully verifiable data on a decentralized network. So what that means in plain speak is basically everything's verifiable by everything else, and there's no secrets, essentially. I mean, yes, you can hide behind anonymity, but the anonymity is not security, right? So to say all that, right, figuring out about NFTs, about crypto, about how this stuff works, how the blockchain works, and that, because of the fact that I'm a tech nerd and that's what I enjoy, and that kind of just drew me in. But then I got really, really deep into it, and I started to realize and understand like everything you do has a transaction cost associated with it. So
Yes.
in the NFT and the crypto space, like every single transaction you make, you have to pay the tax on it, and that tax fluctuates. It's not a fixed tax, at least right now. It's not because of the way that the technology is built, the way crypto is built. It just doesn't stay fixed. It goes up and down. It fluctuates depending on the volume of transactions and all that stuff. But every single thing that I did in the crypto space had some kind of fee associated with it, whether it was a transferring money fee, whether it was transferring from one kind of crypto to another kind of crypto. If I was buying something, I had to pay a thing called gas, which is basically a transaction fee on the calculations on the money,
Wow.
the crypto money.
Mm-hmm.
So in that whole process, I started to kind of understand, and then I thought about it from the regular money standpoint, like regular cash, regular checks, regular banks, which are very, very slow, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I started to think about like there's a lot of fees that we pay that we don't understand that we pay. So some of them are very public and they're very upfront, and they're like, these are the fees you have to pay. And then there's some that are on the back end that you don't necessarily hear about or you don't know about until they actually happen, or till much later after transactions happen, or whenever things happen. And then not only that, like you pay taxes on stuff that you buy, you pay taxes on the money that you make. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
transaction fees involved that I think people don't take into account, and that's what really kind of solidified in my mind, because once I understood that, right? Once I understood that there's so many fees and so many transaction fees, and so much of a percentage of your money is not actually your money. No matter how much money you make, there's a percentage of it
Mm-hmm.
that's actually not yours.
Yeah.
Um, and when you don't think about that, you're like, oh, this is bullshit. And the government's screwing me over. They're taking all my
Mm-hmm.
money. And it's like, no, man, you have to pay taxes, whether you pay
Mm-hmm.
taxes in America, or you pay taxes in Bolivia, or you pay
Yeah.
taxes uh, in Germany, or wherever you pay taxes at. Like taxes are
Mm.
taxes. That's just part
Yeah.
of life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's ways to mitigate and minimize those taxes, and there's things you can do legally, and then there's things you can do illegally, of course. But at the end of the day, like you have to pay taxes on the money. The money isn't free money. Like you don't go to work for 8 hours and get paid $10 an hour and bring home, $80 or whatever. Like you
Right.
have to pay taxes on that money. Not only that, you have to pay the opportunity costs of
Mm.
your time, the time
Yeah.
that you spend in the car going back and forth, your gas money, paying for oil for the car and tires, and like all these things you have to calculate in.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of people don't actually calculate those kind of things. And so I'm curious to know about that financial um, therapy, and what, if you can describe it to me and tell me, and maybe go into a little bit deeper of what it is, why it is, and
Mm-hmm.
what do they do to make effective change in that.
Yeah. Well, I'm still new to the financial therapy space, and I'm not a financial therapist. So that's kind of an interesting subset of. So there's I know I met a link on LinkedIn, a financial therapist, and he was a practicing therapist before getting certified in financial therapy. So it is a relatively new concept and everything, but yeah, it's really trying to get into the psychology of finance, and really like the behavioral change element of personal finance. So they don't really deal with the numbers as much. They deal with like, okay, you let's say for instance, like you're a child of divorce, and post divorce your financial situation changed, and it was just so much trauma that happened during that time. So that's like a financial trauma that it's a key point in your development, but you don't realize how it affects your finances until you're an adult. And then you learn these habit patterns from your parents and from your upbringing. And a lot of times, just like any traumas, a lot of times you don't even realize they exist until they manifest later on in life. Whenever you're on your own and you're an adult and you're managing your finances, you're like, wait, why am I doing it this way? Why am I buying this thing when I know it's not the right thing for me to do right now with my finances? So it's really kind of peeling back the onion of that behavioral side of personal finance. Um, and then there's there's a lot of really cool developments in the personal finance space. So even certified financial planners, if I remember correctly, have recently started incorporating a psychological element to their education. So now I think, if I remember correctly, in order to be a CFP, they have a module on the the psychology of finance. So so yeah, there's a lot there's a lot in that space that's growing, and really it's just going to come down to getting those platforms out there and getting the messaging out there. And I'm just trying to be a part of that space. It's a really interesting space to be a part of, even though I'm not a financial therapist. As a financial social worker, there is an element of the psychology behind finances. So we're kind of just like with social work. Yeah, there you go. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, they're starting to realize in the industry that it's not necessarily all about numbers, because a lot of times people, you can give them, you can go through the numbers with them, you give them the exact, okay, you need to spend this, this, and this, but until you really get into the psychology of it, you're not going to change those financial behaviors. So yeah, that's just it's a growing trend. I think it's going to be the future of personal financial management is knowing the behavioral side of things. So yeah, I'm just excited to be part of the space, and I'm a sponge. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. Networking with all kinds of different people, and there's actually another element of financial management that is, you might be interested in learning more about the integration of AI into the space. Obviously everyone's talking about AI, but it's not going anywhere. I think I see it as a tool, just like anything else, just like Google is a tool. ChatGPT, all these AI bots are not going away, and I think they could actually be used strategically to help you with your finances. I've been dabbling with AI for the past couple of months, just with the business side of things. Just all kinds of different things that I've been messing around with ChatGPT, and I'm just seeing potential. Yes, there are some concerns. There's ethical concerns in the AI space. So I actually have a live stream coming up on LinkedIn with the AI social worker. So we're doing like a mashup event, the AI social worker versus the fire social worker, and so there's a lot of overlap between AI and personal finance. It just hasn't really manifested just yet, but I think that's going to be the next thing. Is like, how do we leverage AI to manage our finances better?
Yeah, it's the funny thing is that the technology doesn't really care about your feelings. So
Yeah.
regardless if you like it, don't like it, if you think it sucks, if you think it's cool, like, it doesn't really care. It's going to continue to iterate and continue to become a thing over time, regardless, as long as it's got traction, and it definitely has traction. I mean, it's basically mainstream now.
Yeah.
But the other thing is it's, I think the day is coming where, and it's basically here, it just needs to be refined a little bit, but the day is coming where you can essentially talk to, say, your Google Home. Hopefully it's not in the room listening while I'm talking, because then it'll start activating and asking what I want. But you can basically talk to, like, say, your Alexa, right? And say, look, here's the deal. I want to do this vacation. We want to do it in 2025, in July of 2025. We've got $2,000 sitting in the bank right now. The vacation, we've added up all the costs so far, and we've estimated about $7,500 for the vacation for myself and my spouse. We're going to this location. We're going to be spending 10 days there. We're going to fly to a location. We're taking a cruise to this other location. will stop off, et cetera, et cetera. All these things are covered. These are the expenses that we have to cover out of pocket. Can you give me a financial breakdown and plan from now until then of what I need to do with my money, where I need to save it, where's the best way to invest my money or put it in some kind of savings account, what kind of percentage of return am I looking for in order to get to this goal, and potentially also have, say, $2,000 extra on top of the total cost for spending money. Go.
Yeah.
And and the thing's going to sit down, it's going to think for a minute, and it'll spin for a second, and then it'll be like, here's your list, and here's what you need to do, and drop your money into a CD for a year, and that'll get you 8% interest, and then you can take that money out and you can shift it here, and then like it's that good already, basically.
Yeah.
It's not perfect at math. I've been testing it at math nonstop, actually, for my class, and I apologize to my teacher for. But I've been trying to train the AI. I was talking to my brother about it the other day. He's like, "Wait a minute, you're training a language learning model how to do math?" I was like, "Yeah." He's a physicist, so he was like, "That doesn't make any sense." I'm like, "Yeah, it doesn't make sense, but it works sometimes."
Yeah, sometimes.
Depends on the math problem. When you start getting into negative exponents, then it starts to go a little bit haywire and starts hallucinating. But I think the AI thing is very important for a number of reasons, but it's for simple things like that. And when you look at it from that perspective, that kind of interface, right? The easiest way to know that technology is taking over is when you don't realize the technology is actually there doing the things. And it's already it's been happening for decades already. Like all the algorithms on YouTube, all the algorithms on Facebook, all the algorithms on Amazon, like they don't just work magically out of the box like that. Like there's a lot of AI tooling in the background that makes that stuff happen. And as we progress, it's going to get more and more narrowed down to specifically to, I mean, Apple just released Apple, the Apple AI on the phone, on the new software that's coming out soon. So it's everywhere already. And I'm just saying it's going to get more and more to the point where it's specific to you and specific to your taste and your wants and your needs. And a lot of people might see that as very, very intrusive and very, very just cringe. But, of course, there's got to be safeguards in place, and you got to protect your privacy and your personal information. But how cool is it to have a specific app on your phone that, everybody can download, but yours is tuned specifically to exactly what you want, what you like, the things that you want to do, the things that you don't want to do, and it knows exactly what to pick. So it's like having a personal assistant. And when you connect that personal assistant to things like DoorDash and to Uber and like all these other services, right? You can literally just tell it like, hey, I'm going on a trip tomorrow. Here's my itinerary. I need you to schedule my Uber. Make sure it's here by 9:45. And on the other end, when I land, I need the Uber. I need a Uber set up at, 3:00 p.m. local time there where I'm landing. And if my flight gets delayed, you can track it on the airline tracker. And then if something happens, you can just bump the time up a little bit so that my Uber is there when I get on the ground. That kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's literally that easy and that hard. I'll say that.
Yeah. Because there's, as I've explored it, I've found that a lot of people don't realize that there is a memory feature in at least the paid ChatGPT, so that it actually remembers the things the things that you write about up to a certain point. So it has a memory. It's learning about you, and then as you get more detailed, the more detailed you get, like you said, you gave that scenario of like, okay, give me the breakdown of this financial situation. And if the more detailed you are, the better your results are going to be. So I think a lot of people are like, they just think, oh, we'll just ask ChatGPT to do this. And then they give you a one sentence answer. And then they think, oh, well, that's not very good. It's like, no, it's like garbage in, garbage out. Like if you put in good nuanced, like thoughtful responses, then it's going to give you more thoughtful, nuanced responses. But obviously it's still learning. It's a language learning model. So yeah, I'm seeing the potential, but I also see, there are some limitations, and like you said, privacy and all that stuff. Like, because in the social workspace, and therapy, people are curious about using like therapy notes, AI tools that can help you basically listen in on your conversation, which a lot of people are a little weird about that, which I get, but these are like HIPAA compliant tools, so they've
Yeah.
gone through the vetting process. And basically what I've seen the potential of positive in the therapy space is, listening on your session, and then creating a log of like all your treatment plans and all this other stuff. Like, it helps you with that stuff, because you know writing notes is a painful process sometimes. So I just see it as, okay, this is a tool, and it can, if it's done ethically and done under HIPAA compliance and things like that, then why don't we at least try, like, and see, obviously we vet it, we make sure that everything is up, up to speed. But it's here, like you said, it's here, it's not going away. It could be a genuinely useful tool. How do we embrace it, and how do we incorporate it for good? And I've seen it in my personal life, or I guess professionally. Like, it's helped me kind of build a business. It's like you said, it's a personal assistant. Like, I can ask it questions like, hey, it helped me build an LLC. And I would have never even thought to consider, oh yeah, I could do an LLC. But yeah, it helped me do that. It's helped me with all the business stuff so far. And I guess I'm more prone to acceptance because I'm a sci-fi nerd growing up. I've always loved sci-fi. So to me, I see AI as the sci-fi that I dreamed is like almost is like here, like we're living it, and I'm just kind of excited about it. I don't know, maybe I'm biased, but I'm just looking at the potential and seeing what it can do. And I'm just a guinea pig at this point. I'm a beta tester.
Going back to the financial stuff for a sec, I wanted to ask you, when you were doing your transition out of the military, you said you did
Mhm.
14, right? And
Yeah.
that was the Air Force, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So when you were doing that transition out of the military, were you actually able to reel in your finances at the time? Was there what kind of financial struggles did you deal with, or did you face when you were going through that, say, last 12 months of being in the military before you got out?
Yeah. So my transition out was definitely a bumpy kind of ride, but yeah, like I had plans to Palace Front. Basically I was going to transition to the Guard, I think the reserves, at the end of my 14-year time, but that didn't pan out. I guess I was they deemed me medically unfit for the Guard Reserves. So that's a whole nother
Mhm.
thing. But ultimately, at that point, my son was on the way, and I was like, I'm ready to leave the service. But I had a pretty decent financial cushion, and that really helped me with my transition. So that's where I really advocate for people. Like with Reed, I'm like, you need money. You need money to for this transition. Even if you do have a retirement check coming in, you know, he basically was like, yeah, it's $2,200 for him, or estimated 2,200. And I'm like, okay, that's income, but you're gonna need money. You're gonna need more money than that, So having that cushion, having that financial cushion is really a form of financial freedom, because it allowed me to give me space, and to try different things, and to because at one point I actually took a job as a life insurance agent, because
Mhm.
and this was my first job out of the Air Force, and I was hoping that I could transition into a financial like a financial role. There was supposed to be like a within this company, like you start off as a life insurance agent, and then eventually you can become like a certified financial like person, you know. So there was a whole that was the idea, but that didn't really sit well with me, or didn't resonate with me at the time. So I did that for a couple of months. But really, like, yeah, having that financial cushion, I keep going back to that, but
Mm.
that gave me that because I know some people when they transition out, they have to get a job immediately, you know, because their
Yep.
bills are paying are lining up, and they're forced into a job that they may not want to do because of that financial urgency. Whereas I didn't have that necessity of like I have to find a job immediately. Now, granted, I did burn through some savings, and I, you know, it did, you know, I eventually had to get a job, and I you know, I stumbled as most service members do when they get out, because I had like a bunch of different ideas, but I didn't really have, I guess, a firm vision or plan. I was just like, okay, I want to do finance, you know.
Right.
So I took a long windy road to get there, or to get where I am now. But yeah, without that financial cushion, yeah, who knows what type of the transition I would have had. Um, so yeah, if I'm talking to any future retirees, or you know, future transitioning members, that would be the biggest thing for me, is to have a cushion, have a um, you know, an emergency fund, because you're going to need it. You know, the military will, you know, they pay for all kinds of stuff when you transition, and all this other stuff, but you're going to need cash to do some of these things, you know, as you've probably, I mean, you're in another country now, right? So
Right.
I can only imagine all the things that you had to do to get to where you are. But without that cushion, it makes it really, really difficult to do that.
Yeah, and even without the cushion, I mean, yes, the cushion definitely helps. And again, as I said in the beginning, it ebbs and flows, right? You at one day
Yeah.
you have 10,000 in the bank as a savings, and the next day you have like 4, and then the next day you
Hmm.
have like 14. It just goes
Yeah.
back and forth. And it's I think that kind of circles back to that whole like your relationship with money, right?
Right. Hmm.
Uh, and it's kind of like your relationship with anything, right? If you take the setbacks, so and again, this past 2 weeks like have not been my shining moments of mental stability and like maintaining my attitude and things like that, just because of circumstances and everything going on. Um, but at least I have, you know, my wife is understanding enough, and she knows enough about me, and we have a way to talk to each other without going into like crazy arguments and all the nonsense that normal
Right.
people maybe deal with. So I've done that before, and I don't want to do that again. And
Hmm.
she's there to reel me in a lot, and I thank her for it
Yeah.
tremendously, because without her being able to do that, like it takes a special kind of person to deal with a veteran. I'll
Hmm.
just say that. So, but yeah, the ebbs and flows, like the relationship that you have with money, um, it's really it trickles into all these other aspects of your life, like the relationship you have with other people, the relationship you
Yeah.
have with your kids, with your dog. Like, um, it's not always going to be happy, smooth sailing, and there's ups
Right.
and downs in it, and depending on how you take the ups and how you take the downs, right, is really kind of the trick to how you actually deal with it overall, like macro.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you take a $2,000 loss as like this devastating blow to not only your pocketbook but to your ego,
Hmm.
that's, for me anyway, that's kind of one of the little red flags to watch out for personally. Is you just got to take it as it comes, and you've got to understand that your self-worth, as you said, is not tied to your net worth, right? Um, and there's a big distinction between the two. Like, they're totally opposite ends of the
Hmm.
conversation.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of a combination of things, right? It's that
Hmm.
relationship you have with money, and with finances, and then the relationship you have kind of with yourself and then
Yeah.
with other people, and how those things kind of intertwine between each other, because you'll find out your behavior in relationships if your relationship is with somebody else is that way, and you've got these highs and lows in the relationship. Your relationship with finances probably is going to be something similar to that, because how you deal with one thing is how you deal with everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's really interesting. I'm curious to know, when you're so setting up the nest egg or setting up this emergency fund alongside of, say, reoccurring debt that you have, what is kind of like, can you do the things in tandem? Like for somebody who has never done any financial planning before and is trying to get
Mhm.
to a debt-free place in the next 3 to 5 years, because they know they're going to retire, they're going to transition out of the military and go on to do civilian stuff, and maybe they don't really want to go on to another job immediately, like you said.
Mhm.
But are there some of those things that they can do in tandem, or how do you balance that, like paying off the debt and paying into the emergency fund? Do you have to make any kind of like sacrifices? You got to take some steps back with your personal life and your and how you spend money, or how's that work?
Mhm. Well, I mean, with the debt management is that's a whole another psychological landmine sometimes, because we get into debt a lot of times for multiple different reasons. Some, some good, some bad, some ugly. But yeah, really, debt is just a kind of a constant in a lot of people's lives. And when it comes to the military, um, with the PCSs and the TDYs and all the ups and downs, like it can be difficult managing your finances, but there's also a lot of different like ways of hacking the system to leverage those, like the TDY money. For those who are, not in the military community, TDY is temporary duty. It's essentially where you go on like a temporary mission, or some kind of training, or all these different things. And a lot of times they give you per diem, they give you there are different ways that you can actually leverage that, and kind of hack whenever you're on TDY. And I've seen both of the ends of the spectrum in that. Some people go on TDY and they go ham. They're partying every
Literally.
night, they're drinking all the time, and they're and that's up to a certain point. Like, I get that, like,
Yeah.
because some of these TDYs are fun and you can have a lot of fun, and you're, so that yeah, TDYs are a whole different beast. But ultimately, I've seen where, some people will like pack their lunch, or they'll go to the commissary, and they'll um, they'll pocket their extra money on TDY, because some of these TDYs, the per diems are pretty nice. So like,
Yeah.
if you're smart about it, you can save significant money on TDYs. And then obviously deployments, or you can volunteer for deployments, because that's another thing that some people can do to kind of beef up their income. Um, but yeah, when it comes to managing your debt, I think it really kind of depends on how high interest your debt is. That's where I would focus. Like, if your debt load and you have high interest debt, then I would personally focus on that. But then that doesn't mean, like you were saying, you can't do it in tandem. But you're essentially you're trying to split the difference there a little bit. And you might not be as effective if you went all in on your debt relief. Like, you're like let's say you did like a Dave Ramsey thing,
Hmm.
then in theory, if you pay off your debt fast enough, you can use that debt snowball, you know, and then just start beefing up your savings after you pay off your debts. So that would be one strategy. And it really kind of depends on your personality type. And some people like to aggressively do things, and like they have that tunnel vision. They like to have that. Whereas other people, they do like to kind of spread it out and do, like, okay, I'm gonna I'm gonna do my debt. Maybe payment is not as aggressive, but I'm also still saving for the future. So I think there's definitely going to be some, you know, for some people you can manage both, but I would say you may not be as efficient in if you were like had that tunnel vision of okay, I'm going to put all my monies to debt repayment. And then whenever I pay off my debts aggressively, then I will turn that money into savings and investments. And that's essentially what I did when I joined. I started my fire journey was basically, I had $20,000 in debt when I joined the Air Force as an E3. I didn't have, I was making like $1,500 a pay or a month. And I just, before I joined, I was like, I'm going to get out of debt, like that's my goal. And I basically learned about personal finance. I learned, I did the Dave Ramsey method. So by the time I was done with my $20,000 debt repayment, I had like $1,000 is my debt snowball. So I was paying $1,000 towards my debts. And then once I made my last debt payment, I was like, cool. Like, what do I do with this $1,000? And then I basically went from debt repayment right into aggressive investment and savings. So that would be one possible path, is to do it like that. But it's really going to come down to your personality type and like, getting to know who you are, what resonates with, because some people don't really see debt as necessarily a bad thing. Like they don't have that hair on fire mentality about paying off their debts. Whereas other people see debt almost as like a shame and like an embarrassment, and like they feel really bad about themselves because of their debt. And I think I've kind of been on both ends of the spectrum. Like I treated my initial $20,000 debt as bad debt, and I was embarrassed about it. But then my current debt is a mixture of like, student loans, all kinds of other things. And I don't really see that necessarily as bad debt, but I'm definitely still going to be paying. I'm aggressively paying it off. So, yeah, that's one of those things where you're going to have to learn a little bit about yourself and what makes you tick, what makes you feel good at night, and then try to find a strategy that works for you. And honestly, I really advocate for people just talking to a financial counselor, especially if you're active duty. You have these resources available to you that you don't have in the outside world usually. I mean, you have a free financial counselor on base usually, at least one or two, maybe more, depending on how big the base is. They have financial classes, like the military is doing better about teaching people about finances and, being more proactive versus reactive. But there's a lot that needs to be done on that front too.
Yeah, we mentioned it actually, I think last week. We might have been talking about it, or maybe it was a little bit before that, but how the financial like planners and financial readiness folks on the base, uh, they're there to help for sure, but usually the only time you see them is when you're really, really, really deep in the
Yeah.
mess, and you're getting command referred to go
Right.
see
Yeah.
the financial counselor. So
Right.
that's not always the
Yeah.
best situation to be in, and the best way to approach it. But yeah,
Mhm.
there's pretty much on every single base where people normally want to go. Like I think on the Army side, it would be the ACS. Where would folks in the Air Force go if they wanted to get in touch with somebody?
The Airman Family Readiness Center is kind of like the MWR for was it the Marines, I think, and do you
Mhm.
guys have MWR or is that the Marines? I can't remember.
We have I think everybody has MWR, but the
Okay.
Marines, I
Yeah.
think their family readiness is called the Fleet and Family, I think is what it's
Hmm.
called for the Navy
Yeah.
and Marines both.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So usually they're placed in those elements. Sometimes there are actual financial people that are tied to different squadrons. Like if they're big enough squadrons and they actually need that individualized support, they'll actually have somebody attached to that squadron. But even then, that's one person that's trying to help hundreds and hundreds of people. So
Right.
it's kind of a drop in the bucket sometimes, but at least it's there. It exists as a resource. But what I'm actually envisioning trying to build out is like a platform for financial counselors to be linked up with potential um, customers. So
Mhm.
I'm actually looking at so I'm wanting to create a platform that gives free financial counseling to veterans. It's almost like Uber or lift or whatever, where it's like a gig economy type, like you have freelance financial counselors, and they're gonna basically have like a profile that says, okay, I work with debt relief, or I work with, you have like a, just like a BetterHelp has therapy. I'm wanting to create something like that for financial counseling, um, and then essentially give all that to the veteran community, and basically say, okay, look, this is a big issue, and it's not going to go away anytime soon, but we need to advocate for, you know, financial support for our veterans who, sometimes didn't get that training in the military. So that's something that I'm kind of working on in the background, is like, okay, how do I do something like this? But, it's something that I'm passionate about, and I just, looking forward to working with other companies. I've got my LLC now, and I'm trying to basically build a financial counseling, company of sorts. But yeah, I mean, like I said, going back to the micro, meso, macro, like there's so many factors at play that it's hard to really, like I want to advocate for legislation for financial literacy in the school level, high school, and advocate for the DoD to really start putting more effort into financial literacy, from, basic training to your AIT, your training, basically every stage in that early stage is really critical to help people, young people especially, manage their finances. Um, so yeah, that's part of my vision. um but it's early. We'll see how that goes. I probably got too many irons in the fire right now, but I'm just excited about all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you got to strike when you can strike, man. It's just the way it goes. There's days where I'm like, do I really need to do podcasting? Is that really the thing I need to do? And
Uh-huh.
then usually that's quickly erased out of my mind because I've got, hours of editing that I need to do, and I got to
Mm,
create thumbnails and posts on social media, and I don't get a chance to really sit and think about it too much.
yeah.
But yeah, trying to figure out what the next steps are, and how to go about uh, expanding, broadening, making things bigger, having a bigger impact on the community at large, right? The veteran community at large, or whichever community you're trying to serve at large, at scale. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's tough.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like you said in, I think, in your post, it's tough to manage the family life sometimes when you're trying to do a side hustle and then also have a full-time job, at least for me. And then, being a dad and a husband, and all this stuff. It's a
Yeah.
lot. Um, but ideally, ultimately, I would like to do this, full time. I think you guys mentioned it in one of the other episodes, but I also coincidentally mentioned it in one of my previous episodes. But the concept of ikigai, I think
Hmm.
Victor had mentioned it, and
Yep.
yeah, like I recently stumbled upon that, and I was just like, man, I love this. I love this concept. And I'm like, okay, what is my ikigai? And I mentioned it in one of my videos. I'm like, this personal finance stuff, like that's my ikigai. At least as far as like, meeting the criteria, but technically, I'm not making any money off of this and all this other stuff. But like, I feel like this is my ikigai. It's just even with that knowledge, what do I do with it? So, um, but that's also another thing that I've really trying to advocate for in the veteran community, is how do we get veterans to find their ikigai? Like, how do we advocate for that? Because I think a lot of veterans are so lost when they get out of the service. It's pervasive, and then I see it like even in the hospital system. I see, homeless veterans. I see, you know, all these problems in the community, and I guess I'm a big, big-hearted dude, and I just want to fix everything, but I know I can't.
Yeah.
But yeah, if there's a way, and there are some companies, some veteran communities that are actually working on trying to instill this whole concept of like a ikigai, or reason for being post military service. Because whether you're 20, 30 year retiree or you're just 4 years and done, like it's still a transition for everyone that gets out of the service. And some people find their ikigai early on, and others they're just constantly trying to figure it out. Um, so that's definitely something I hope that we can, and as a collective in the veteran space, like how do we encourage that? How do we get veteran? Because I feel like when veterans do find their ikigai, they just take off. Like they're
Yeah.
in the stratosphere. So if we can get more and more veterans to really find their passion, then it's going to be a great thing for everybody involved.
Yeah, that's it's definitely a reoccurring question. It's definitely something that I try to skim over and touch on a little bit in the podcast. If you've watched any of the episodes, or if you listen to any of the episodes, you'll notice that Victor is very tactical. He's very on point with the questions. He's asking questions that are relevant to the audience. I'm not always asking questions that are relevant to the audience. That's why we go down these rabbit holes like crypto, and it's probably good that Victor's not here today. I hope I saved you the stress. But I like to go on some of these more esoteric, like deep dives and side quests, because I feel like there's a lot to unravel underneath all of that stuff, especially in the interviews that we do, the regular interviews with the veterans. And we try to get into some of those deeper topics. And that's why it's a long conversation. It takes time to build rapport with somebody that you've maybe never spoke to before. Like we've never had a full-on conversation before, right? We just started talking today. I mean, we've been texting and stuff like that, but to build that rapport with somebody, to build that level of trust with somebody, like that takes time. And so I'm condensing like a 10-year relationship down into 2 hours, which people think is maybe a little bit excessive to be 2 hours for a podcast or a talk. But really, like, it's even more excessive if you go down to 30 minutes, if you think about it from that perspective, right? So I try to dig, and Victor does too. Victor definitely gets into the weeds of trying to tease out some of that purpose. We talk about it a ton. And really that's really kind of one of the unlocks. Like I think it all just revolves back to the psychological things, right? That you mentioned, the psychological financial planners course that's part of the FPC coursework, and I didn't know that existed. I didn't know that was a thing. But it makes total sense to me, because at the end of the day, like there's a lot of psychological things, especially from veterans, especially from people who've served 10, 20, 30 years in the military, and then potentially spend another 10 or 20 years as a civilian with the DoD or Department of whoever. Because there's a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? There's the people you're surrounded by, right? Not to say they're good or bad or otherwise, but the environment that you're surrounded in is very mission oriented, mission driven. And at the same time, if you've worked in the government for any amount of time, like we don't produce a product. What do we produce? We produce paperwork, we produce meetings, we do a lot of planning, we do a lot of mission planning and things like that. We go and disable the enemy and win wars and things like that, but we don't actually produce a product. We don't have a board of directors. We do not have a P&L sheet. We have no revenues that we're tracking, and there's no board director saying, hey, why is the bottom line not being met, and why are my profit margins not X, Y, and Z? We don't have any of that in the government. And so in that environment, there's a lot of psychological overhead that you have to deal with. I guess it's a good way to put it. I think tying it all back to the psychology thing, and I would almost say like it's a starting point for a therapy session with a regular therapist, right? To try to unpack some of that, not only the financial stuff, but also like the what do you want to be when you grow up kind of stuff. Because if you unlock some of those psychological barriers that are blocking you from thinking beyond your your 100 square feet of space that you're in or whatever it happens to be, then you can unlock a lot of other things. And that's why a lot of times in the podcast, we interview people from all different types and backgrounds and walks of life, because we want to give different perspectives. We want to show you like, hey, this person was in the military for 22 years and then they got out and then they, opened up an ice cream truck in El Paso, like Mr. Tarone's, the episode that we just dropped. He literally just opened up an ice cream stand, one of those mobile ice cream stands in El Paso, because he was trying to fill a need for something that was blatantly obvious, obesity, poor eating habits, lack of access to good, healthy food at a reasonable price. So yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely interesting.
But I think one thing that I've also stumbled upon lately is, like that transition of structure, military structure, military, everything is just like, they tell you how to do everything. And then you get out and you're like, okay, now what do I do? And that transition.
Right. Where are my marching orders?
Yeah. Like, and I struggled with that a little bit too, because like, I got really used to a certain structure, certain patterns and everything. And then, once I got out, I was like, oh, so I am the commander now. I am the person in charge of my own domain. And that can be overwhelming for a lot of people, whether you did 4, 6, 12, 20, whatever, however long you were in. That mental shift can be really difficult for a lot of veterans. Some people, they have a trajectory and they're like, okay, I'm going to get out and I'm going to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company or whatever. And they have that trajectory, and that's great, but for a lot of people, they just don't know what their next chapter is going to look like. They know maybe they know they're done with their military service, that chapter is closing. For some people, maybe it was closed abruptly and not really their own decision, their own choice. But either way, when you join the military, eventually you're going to have to transition out, And I think just trying to give people opportunities to learn from other veterans who have done it successfully. And, I keep going back to the military broadcast radio platform. They're the ones that helped me launch my podcast. And in that process, I've also, we've become like a family. All of us other podcasters, or we're helping each other. We're giving each other, lifting each other up and all this. But ultimately all of us are doing our own thing. We're creating our own content, whatever's passionate to us. The platform has just an amazing assortment of different types of shows. And really what I've seen, and I'm watching their content, is them putting out this content is cathartic for them. It is a form of therapy, and I think, at least for me, I could say that this is also a form of therapy for me too, where I feel like I'm trying to help other veterans, other people who might be struggling. And I feel like you guys are doing that too. So I do think that there's going to be a, big veteran-led content creator space. And I think that that's something that, obviously we're a part of that space, but, like the military influencer conference, I was like, wow, that's a thing. That's pretty cool. As soon as I heard about that, I was like, oh, wow, that would be cool to go to. But yeah, I think the fact that that's even a thing, and the fact that there are people out there that, this community of military content creators, I think it's a great thing. And I really do think that more people need to hear, especially the veteran produced content, because it's almost like we're also talking to civilians with our content too, where they can see, okay, because a lot of these shows are very open and transparent about like, hey, I'm dealing with this, I'm dealing with substance abuse or mental health, and we're just putting our stuff out there. And I really resonate with that, and I hope that other people will start to see this type of content and be like, wow, that's really helpful, or even just, they can resonate with it, somehow, and it might help one veteran, and that's what it's all about, helping out some veterans, so that's one thing that I've definitely really internalized lately is, um, part of my ikigai is trying to give back,
Yeah.
so I'm just honored to be a part of this space, and I think we have talked a little bit about MBR, but I'm just I'm a team member, but it's also, like I said, a family, and I just hope that there's more interest in that space, and just let's help each other out. Like that's the whole point.
Yeah, I actually have a interview with them on the what's today, 7th? On the 11th. I got an interview with
Okay.
them. So to get LinkedIn, and that's really it's just like the more platforms we can be on, the more spaces we can be on. That's why I'm
Yeah.
streaming to Twitter, X, or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
separately, apart from streaming to like LinkedIn and to YouTube and everywhere else at the same time. That's really it, right? It's like, what you kind of alluded to in the beginning, like, I wish you guys would have been around, or I didn't know you guys existed before I came in contact with you. Well, partially that's probably, we're a smaller channel, but also partially like, and that's kind of like what I tell Victor a lot too, and we discuss a lot. I'm like, what we're doing right now is the most important thing, but at the same time, it doesn't matter at all because not enough people are hearing it.
Mhm.
If that makes any sense. Not to say
Yeah.
that it
Yeah.
doesn't matter, but that's
No.
kind of
Yeah.
like my analogy. Like, we can put out whatever the hell we want and it
Mhm.
doesn't matter. We can put
Yeah.
whatever thumbnails we want, it doesn't matter. We can make whatever the titles, we can talk about whatever topics, it doesn't actually matter
Mhm.
until we have the threshold, we reach that threshold of audience members or people in the community listening, paying attention, getting involved in the conversations,
Mhm.
interacting with us. We're able to interact with them. That's why I sit all the time whenever somebody comments on a video. I'm on there, like, commenting back
Mhm.
immediately,
Yeah.
because I know what it's like to be an audience member or a listener or somebody who's paying attention to a community and not be
Mhm.
heard. And I don't
Yeah.
want that to happen, because especially for the veteran community, because that's
Mhm.
one of the, like, that's the existence of why we should even be here in the first place, is to give veterans a voice so that they can
Mhm.
be heard, both ways, whether it's
Yeah.
through an interview with a guest or whether it's through interaction through comments in whatever post we make or whatever video we put out, or
Mhm.
anything that we produce content wise.
Yeah.
So opening that dialogue, I see it a lot, when I look at like the Reddit threads for our army or our veterans or whatever.
Mhm.
There's a lot of conversations going on, and they're more anonymous conversations. But
Yeah.
if you look for me on Reddit, you'll see the Military Retirement Podcast, so you know it's me.
Yeah.
It's not Victor, it's me. So
Mhm.
if you see me out there on Reddit, you know who you're talking to. And
Yeah.
a lot of people are like, yeah, it's supposed to be anonymous. I'm like, I don't care. Like, I
Mhm.
don't honestly care.
Yeah.
If people have got my information, or if they've got my contact, or if they've got my email address or my phone number, like, I don't really care,
Mhm.
because I want people to be able to contact me and get in touch with me directly and not talk to a
Yeah.
bot, and not
Mhm.
outsource my chat capabilities to Fiverr or whatever. Like,
Mhm.
that's not what I want to do.
Yeah. But there's some great conversations being had on Reddit, and that's the other thing that's challenging is Reddit is kind of an anonymous type of platform in some ways. You have your username, but yeah, you don't really associate it with your person. Where and I'm the same way. Like I've been open. Like I'm the fire social worker on Reddit, so I'm trying to also get engaged with people on Reddit, because that's just a great resource. A lot of great conversations are being had, and people are putting out like legitimately, like, oh man, I've got this situation, and how do like, it's like they're crying for help, and there's a whole plethora of people out there like like you, that have been like, hey, I've been in your shoes and I can help you. And so it's like, it's almost like like just engaging with a possible client, like right there, um, or not, I would say client, but you know what I mean? Like they're, we're trying to help people in any platform that we can. And, Reddit
Right.
is just another one of those platforms. So I definitely advocate for that too. And I'll be looking for you on Reddit now. But
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I wish I had more hands and more Johns
yes.
around me
Hmm.
to kind of do all this. And I'm glad I have thank God every day that I have Victor alongside here doing the
Mm,
co-host thing with me and helping me, and we're working together collectively to push the stuff forward. But even with the two of us, like, it's not enough people.
yeah.
I need like a team of anxious, anxious, not the right word, interactive, like really ready to go 20-year-olds who have phones, who are, recording and answering everything on every platform.
Hmm.
But I don't have that yet. So,
Yeah.
so if you're out there listening and you're
Yeah.
still in the military and you've only been in the military for a few years and you're still like under that 30 threshold, and you like doing things online and you would like to help out and get involved, like, hit me up, hit
Yes.
Victor up, let us know. We can't pay you anything because we can't pay ourselves anything, but we'll definitely put you in the credits. We'll bring you on the show, like whatever you want to do. I can use all the hands I can get to make this stuff work better.
Mm,
Hopefully one day we'll get to the point where we can actually pay somebody to do something, depending on how things go. But
yeah.
yeah, man. Yeah, it takes a lot of effort, constant effort every single day. So I want to transition to um I want to transition to VR&E stuff real quick
Okay.
and
Yeah.
chat about that. So let me let you go first, and then I'll dive in with my stuff. But yeah, let's talk about VR&E.
Okay. Yeah. So I stumbled upon VR&E, once again, another program that I wish was more addressed in like TAP and things like that. But I was finishing up my graduate degree and I was running out of my GI Bill benefits, and I think I stumbled upon a VR&E Facebook group. And just started going down the rabbit hole of like, okay, what is this program, and because basically my counselor at the college was like, okay, you're going to run out of benefits. And I was basically going to be like, well, I'm going to have to take out student loans for my last year of grad school. But then I found out about the VR&E program, and then it was weird because like once I got connected with a counselor, like it was almost like there was a sense of urgency from my counselor where they're like, no, we need to get you in this VR&E program now, so that way you we will basically pay for the rest of your program. And I give credit to my counselor, and I know there's a lot in the community that will gripe and complain about, the inconsistency of some of the counselors. But at least
Mhm.
from my experience, I had a great counselor. She was just amazing, and she, got me set up with the school. Um, Obviously, yeah, as you know, there's a lot of paperwork involved. There's a process to, you got to do your career scopes, and you basically have to validate, okay, I need the government to pay for this program for me. um, and you have to justify it, and you have to provide documentation. And I think because I was midway through my master's degree in social work, they already were like, okay, you've proven that you're committed to this path. So it was easier for them to approve my path than, I think some people have had struggles with VR&E because maybe they don't have a clear enough vision and they can't quite sell their vision to the counselor, so they get denied. um,
Right.
so that's where, if I'm telling somebody else to, if they're looking into the VR&E program, is to really do your homework and really be prepared, because you're going to have to do some homework to justify the program.
Do you think it's them not being able to explain their desires and what they're trying to do, or do you think it's people trying to give canned responses that they've heard on the internet?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of the canned responses. They're, people are trying to hack the program a little bit. They're like, oh,
Mm,
if I say the right thing or do X, Y, and Z, then it's like they're looking at like a roadmap or a game plan that maybe someone else has done. But really, I encourage people to make it personal, and really, you know, um, really make it to where your reason. It's almost like your ikigai, where you're like, this is what I want to do. I'm passionate about this path, this program, because it's like essentially you're basically saying, I need the government to finish paying for my degree program. Or it's not necessarily even a degree program, it can be an apprenticeship, or
right.
all these other different programs. But yeah, essentially you have to convince the government that I need this training or I need this education in order to achieve my career goals. So that's the big thing. It's like the GI Bill is just like, they don't care what you use your money on. Like you can do a basket weaving or whatever. Whereas the
Mhm.
VR&E, they care, because like they want to make sure that they're putting money into the people that are genuinely passionate about their path. They're doing their due diligence, and yeah, like it's a great program. Um, they paid for um, they paid for a laptop for me and a printer. Um, I've heard of some people getting like MacBooks, if like, so there is a lot of variation in the program, because like if you're going to be a graphic designer, you can actually justify, okay, I need an Apple like MacBook, and
Right.
sometimes they will approve that. Whereas most times they're going to give you a standard, just a laptop package. I got like a Dell, which was fine. Um, I've heard of other people, like they'll actually help you get a computer chair, like an ergonomic computer chair. If you have like back issues and things like that, you have to provide this documentation and justification once again. But there's a lot that the program can do. I've heard of people getting their doctorates. They're going back to law school and doing all kinds of really amazing things. So um, but yeah, that my experience has been all positive. uh, they pay for, you do get the E5 stipend. It's not really BAH, but it's basically it's essentially like a BAH. And let's see what else. After you finish your program, they'll still pay I think 2 months of additional BAH after you've actually completed, like basically while you're in the job searching phase, they'll pay you a little bit of extra like those last 2 months. So
Interesting.
yeah, so it's a great program. Obviously a huge advocate, and I try to tell everyone about it. But yes, that being said, you do have to do your homework. You have to be, you have to be on point basically. Otherwise, they're gonna potentially shoot you down. But that doesn't. Even if you get shot down, that means you have to retool your application. Um,
Right.
but but yeah, I am curious. With your situation so far, like, how did you stumble upon the VR&E, and then what has been your experience like that so far?
Yeah, my experience so far has been really, really profound. I've heard about the VRNE a few times, some of the interviews that we've done, and then just the research that I do pretty much daily, whether it's through the VA website or any other websites that I'm trying to dig up information, not just for myself, but also for folks out there in the audience who may be listening or watching. Like, we're constantly trying to evolve and grab the right information. That's why, one of the videos that we have is about Space A. It's because Space A is a very important thing for me. I feel like it's a great resource and a great thing for not only veterans, but also active duty folks. I put out the
Hmm.
one Space A video or the two Space A videos, and it's probably one of our biggest watched, like most watched videos.
Nice.
And it's like 10 minutes long. So
Hmm.
you never know what hits or what doesn't hit. And we're not trying to like play the play the numbers and try to figure out what actually hits, but we're also
Yeah.
just basically doing a ton of research So I've been looking into it. Victor's been looking into it for a while. And at the end of the day, I was like, I really want to talk about it because I keep seeing so much good information about it. I read all the information about what it does and what it's for. And then I was like, this is something really, really, really good. And so I wanted to get a firsthand perspective on it. I didn't really have any high expectations of like what was going to come of it, or if they were even going to try to cover my school costs or anything like that. But basically, just wanted to get the first person perspective of
Yeah.
how it actually works. And I'm going to put together a video in the midst of doing all these other things. I'm going to put together a few videos to talk about it, but basically, it was like get linked up with the counselor, put in the application online. It's super simple. You get linked up with the counselor, and then from that point, the clock starts, and you're literally doing work until you get that final package put together, and they give you the approval letter or whatever it is that comes back that says, okay, this is the program that we're recommending for you to be in based on everything we've talked about, all the market research you've done on jobs and everything of where you want to go, and also a lot based on your disability rating and what you're
Mhm.
actually rating on your disabilities, because that plays a big part of it of, what kind of job can you take or what kind of employment can you take that's not going to exacerbate your disabilities that you currently have or any that you may encounter in the future based off of degeneration of bones and things like that,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
that was kind of how it was explained to me. And the thing that I think maybe a lot of people, A, they don't know about the program, and B, um, before they get into the program, or if they're trying to do some research on the program, they don't understand that the counselor that you're assigned for your VR&E is there with you the whole time you're in the VR&E process. So if your
Mhm.
process takes 3 years or 4 years, you're going to have that one counselor with you the whole entire time, checking up on you, making sure you're getting progress done. If there's anything you need to speak with them about something changed, you've had a life
Mhm.
moment that happened that changed things or whatever, like you're going to be interfacing with that one person the whole entire time. So
Yeah.
that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, it's a lot of work. Like I said, I just got everything finished. My counselor gave me about 30 days. He was like, look, this is what you got to do. I can actually bring it up on the screen if anybody wants to see it. But basically, I had to do market research. I had to do kind of a personality background check, job wise, like the job perspective wise. I had to get a bunch of job information for the different types of jobs that I was looking for, or the different types of work that I was looking for. And then also my transcripts of what I have currently, what my degree program is currently in, how I'm using it. And then, yeah, and then that was it. Get that stuff turned in. And then they come back and they give you the program that they've recommended, based on everything you spoke about. And then you sign that. And then once you sign that, depending on what you're doing, like for mine, it incorporates partially school. So my degree program goes right along with it. They'll take over the GI Bill and pay from their pot of money for my schooling. Um, and because of the fact that I was rated before I started using my post 9/11 GI Bill, they've done a thing called a retroactive induction, which basically requests for them to refund the 9/11 funds that I've used already, right? So it basically goes back into my post 9/11 bank account, basically, of the, I don't know, 6 or 8 or however many months I've used so far of the post 9/11 GI Bill, which I thought was really super interesting. And then I dug into it a little bit and found out that there's a lot of retroactive induction for a lot of different things, not just for post 9/11 GI Bill, but for a
Mm.
lot of different things in the VA and in the government in general. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff in I think it's the CFR. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick.
Yeah, that's actually interesting because I hadn't heard about the retroactive induction thing. Because I'm curious if I might be eligible for something to get some of my GI Bill benefits back.
Yeah, so spoiler alert, this is actually one of the pages in the book that we're getting ready to put out, the little booklet,
Hmm.
the guide to what you should be thinking about before you get out or exit the military. But this thing right here, retroactive induction. Oh, I can't click on it because it's not. That's fine. I can look up retroactive induction. But basically, what it does is they'll reimburse you for the GI Bill if you meet a couple of criteria. So one of the criteria is you have to have been rated as a veteran, been rated at 10% prior to starting to use the GI Bill or the 9/11 GI Bill. And then after starting to use the GI Bill, then you started to do the VR&E program. So from there, once you start using the VR&E program, then they can request for an induction. It's not going to mean that they're actually going to give it to you, but they make the request through their channels on your behalf to see if they can get that kind of retroactively given back to you.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check into that. That's pretty cool.
Yep, there it is right there. M28C VB6 direct reimbursement and retroactive induction. And if you look here, there's a bunch of retroactive induction for chapter 33, for chapter 30, 35. There's a bunch of different ones. So yeah, I didn't realize that all that stuff was out there. And that's just the things that you figure out when you're going down these rabbit holes. And that's why I wanted to do it firsthand so I can understand like what exactly I'm dealing with. But it gives you all the information. There's some precedents there for some kind
That's
of,
cool.
I don't know.
So I'm just curious. I don't know. You probably might have mentioned in a previous podcast or show, but like, what is your goal long term with the VR&E program?
So my goal is basically to finish up my marketing, which will then also offset or kind of go in tangent with this podcast that I'm doing, with all the social media stuff that I'm doing. So basically, the marketing is kind of the backbone reinforcement of what I'm actually doing.
Okay.
And then that's setting me up to either create my own marketing firm or partner with or align with some marketing firm out there. But it all really points back to the podcast. Like I made that very clear up front. I did go online and look at a couple videos, and I was like, okay, what do I do for this VR&E interview? Like, what am I supposed to say? The same thing people do for CMP exams, right? You go out there and you look online, and there's these different sites that tell you different things, and they're like, yeah, when you go to the CMP exam, you have to say this, and you have to make sure you emphasize this, and if they're asking about range and motion, this, and like I was like, all right, cool, I got it. I've never been the kind of person to sit down and read from a script, even doing the podcast thing. Like I have questions written down, but I generally just try to take it off the top of the head as much as possible and keep it real. So yeah, the same with the VR&E. There was a few websites that I saw and a few different videos that I watched, and then at the end of the day, I was like, I'm just gonna I'm gonna sit down and figure out what my plan is in my head, and then from there, I'm just going to explain what I'm trying to do and see what they say. And so I guess I said the right thing. I don't know what I said that was right or wrong, but I basically just told them honestly and upfront, like, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I'm trying to accomplish. These are my goals. This is what I want to not do. I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm, stressing myself out with work or anything like that. And I'm trying to complete this degree at the same time. So I'm already working on that actively. And based on all that, and then based on all the market research and everything that I did in the background and my kind of skill identifier, like survey thing that I did, based on all that, that's when my counselor said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do the retroactive induction, which I'd never heard about. Yeah. And so far it's been amazing. So far, it's been really, really good. And my counselor is really, really proactive. He's really easy to reach. I can get in touch with him really easily.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm completely happy with the program. But again, everybody's experience is going to be different. Depends
Yeah.
on where your counselor is, what day of the week it is, how much coffee they've had. Like all those human things factor in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, just like for your CMP exams, you know, like that I've heard of stories of like, you know, really, you know, physically damaged people that don't get like nothing, they don't get anything, you know, and then other people, you know, they're barely hurting and then they get, you know, 80% or something, you know. That's, I mean, that's a whole nother can of worms. But yeah, I definitely understand that it's kind of confusing. The programs are not consistent sometimes, but in general, like I've had a great experience. It sounds like you've had a great experience, and I've heard of other people that have great experiences. That being said, there are obviously some bad stories and some horror stories, and maybe some people that have bad taste in their mouth. But you know, like it's a good program. I would say, as you've demonstrated, is that you've done your due diligence.
Yep.
You went down the deep dive. You did your market research. You did, you know, and that's what they're looking for. Like, did you do your due diligence? And whenever you present everything, it's almost like a Shark Tank thing where it's like, okay, pitch me what your vision is, what market research have you done, and then if you've done all that and you're, you know, obviously passionate about it, that plays. I feel like that plays a factor in it, where it's like, not only, it's not like you're just, you know, regurgitating scripted stuff. You're like, no, this is my vision, this is my path, you know. And I
Yep.
think that will convince enough counselors, if you have that passion and that background of the due diligence, then you're going to be approved. That's just from, you know, my perspective. But obviously it is going to come down to other factors at play. But at the very least, why not try? You know,
Yep.
what do you have to lose at this point? So that's just my 2 cents on VR&E. Yeah, it's a great program. One of the hidden gems, I think, that the VA has out there, that I think they're trying to get more information and get more buzz around it. But hopefully, yeah, I mean, us just talking about it hopefully gets a few people interested in it. You know.
Yeah, I'm definitely, like I said, I'm definitely going to put together a couple of videos. I'm sure Victor will put together a couple because he's trying to go through the process as well. And then, like I said, for anybody paying attention, this is actually out of the book that we're getting ready to push out. So the bottom line up front is the name of the book, and the bottom line up front for VR&E, if you're considering doing educational stuff, even though VR&E isn't an educational program, it's a
Mm-hmm.
rehabilitation and employment program. But and it actually predates the 9/11, or sorry, the GI Bill, I think, by a few years. If I
Yeah.
was doing some
Yeah.
reading the other day, I was
Mm-hmm.
curious to see that.
Yeah, it's been renamed a number of different times over the
Mhm.
years, but yeah, it's been around for a minute. I think they're just finally starting to really put it all together in a way that is digestible for more and more veterans. So
Yep. Yep.
yeah.
But yeah, this is basically what I would say the logical order of march is. If you're already out of the military, if you're a veteran, you only have to have 10%, which I think I put out somewhere before in some other videos or some other information. It was actually 20%, and that's only if you are still active duty pre-discharge rating. This has got to be
Okay.
20%. If
Hmm.
you're already discharged and you have your 214 in hand, you just need a 10% rating from the VA, and then you're authorized for the program. And then, of course, other than honorable or better discharge
Mhm.
is what you will need. So I think most people would fall into that category. There's, of course, ways that you can try to rebut any discharge that you think is not fair or not the right one. You can actually go and try to challenge that if you want to do that, if you need to do that. But
Mhm.
yeah, 10%. So we're talking generally to the veterans in the audience. 10% is what you need to have. But if you're trying to do education, like VR&E is the first one you should try to do. And
Yeah.
then if that doesn't work out or that doesn't pan out the way you want it to pan out, then you can go and use the GI Bill, because the VR&E, if they do cover your education, will cover like 48 months. You get the stipend that you would normally get under the GI Bill, and assuming that you have GI Bill still left, and I think it's only 1 day of GI Bill is what I've come to the conclusion of what the requirement is. If you've got GI Bill still left in your GI Bill bank account, then they will go off of the GI Bill BAH rate versus the VR&E substance allowance rate, which is considerably lower baseline. So let's say all your GI Bill is gone. You've used all 36, 48 months, whatever you had to use. The subsistence allowance will start at about 768, if I remember correctly. I've got the link here to the chart, but I can't click on it because this is the actual book in the editor.
Wow.
But yeah, the subsistence allowance, you can look that up online. Just Google it, you'll find it. It's like 768, 770, somewhere in there is the regular baseline subsistence allowance. And then, of course, if you add dependents up to, I think he said you could go up to like 12 dependents or something like that. I was like,
Wow.
who's got 12 dependents? It's crazy. But yeah, but if
right there.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. At least a European football team. So yeah, if you do have GI Bill left when you're applying for VR&E, which you should do first before anything else, then they'll go off of the BAH of the GI Bill. Otherwise, they'll go off of the VR&E subsistence allowance rate. Which, if you're getting VR&E, it's all called subsistence allowance. It's not called BAH. I think that was the word you were searching for earlier.
Yeah.
But that, and then the GI Bill, and then potentially like a local state education benefit if you have one beyond, Chapter 33 or Chapter 31. That would be the order of march.
Yeah. Once again, if I wish this book existed when I got out, but at least it exists for people now, which is really, or it will exist very shortly. But that's awesome that you put that together. Really excited to see that, and I'm gonna definitely read it and propagate it out to my communities as much as possible whenever it comes out. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, we're just trying to get it out there to the masses and get people, to look at it and get a little glimpse of what it looks like and all that. I'll show you guys the cover just in case if you haven't seen the cover yet, but that's basically what it is.
Nice.
If you steal my title idea, that's fine. I don't care.
Yeah.
You're not gonna hurt my ego.
Right.
At least not today. But yeah, man, that's all I got. I want to be able to give you back some time. I know we've been we're right at the 2-hour mark. And funny enough, if you were listening in on Twitter X, I think the mic was muted the whole time. So oops, sorry about that. Apologize. You just have to go to YouTube and check it out.
Yeah.
You'd be all right.
Oh, we got a comment from Heather McConnell. Just keep the conversation going. That's good. That's good to hear that people are listening.
That's my sister. She's listening. She's always listening. So she's
nice.
trying to support me.
Nice.
The best sister on the planet.
Yeah, for sure.
I have the T-shirt to prove it. But yeah, man, if there's anything that we haven't really covered that you want to touch on real quick, other than that, I want to give you your time back, and I also want to give everybody out there listening or watching your time back as well, because I know Sundays are valuable, and tomorrow is Monday, and some of us have to go back to work, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's been I've enjoyed this thoroughly. It really it's just something that I just really resonates with me, and like I said, you guys' content and the way you guys talk and ask questions and really get into like the nuance and peeling back the layers of the onion. I just love that. So I'm just, like I said, I'm grateful to be on your guys' platform and just talking about things that might be relevant to veterans and the military community. But yeah, if that's all I got for me, but man, I'm excited for you guys' growth and continued integration into the veteran community. So I'm excited.
Thanks, man. I'm gonna actually see if I can. Let me pull up your. I guess I could have had this all pre-planned
That's all good.
beforehand. Let me grab your link real quick and throw it up on the screen. Just for those who are paying attention or need to find it. I could probably throw it in the comments too, or you could throw it in the comments, either one. But yeah, if you're looking for the Fire Social Worker on YouTube and Facebook, you can find them there. That's the link for the YouTube. That's probably the best way to get a hold of them. If you do happen to stumble upon the page or take the link or go to the page, make sure you go out there and subscribe, and just as you do with us, to support what he's doing. And that in turn supports all of us veterans doing all of this stuff for everybody out there. So give them a like, give them a subscribe, go hit all the buttons on the page, whichever ones you can find, just hit all the buttons. Don't worry about it. And that'll definitely help grow what he's doing, putting out good information about financial readiness, financial independence, ways to achieve that. I'm wondering, just as a quick question before we take off, are you taking on any veterans like pro bono, or are you doing any kind of local stuff in your area, like little meetups or anything like that for financial readiness?
Well, I am working on a partnership with. There's a Navy base close by. I'm trying to work with them to kind of just give some free speeches and talks to the military community here. I have my fire boot camp with Reed Cortez that I'm doing the financial coaching with him. I am looking to take on clients for personalized one-on-one coaching, virtual, maybe some group coaching, but that's still early stages of that. But yeah, I'm definitely looking to help as many people as I can with their finances. So that's the mission.
Awesome sauce, man. Yeah, just keep an eye on the YouTube channel. Go do it. Go out there. Go unsubscribe. And support everybody that we're trying to support, and us as well if you want to.
Yeah.
And that way you'll know what's going on and you'll get all the latest updates. You can actually follow the boot camp as it happens, kind of in real time, because it's all recorded. So really good stuff, man. I appreciate you reaching out, and I appreciate you coming on the show and spending time with me, man. It's really good.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. Well, hopefully, we'll stay in touch and keep, maybe I'll see you at the influencer conference, but we'll see. I need to get on your guys' level if I'm going to do that, but someday maybe.
Nah, I think it'd be good either way. If you have the means and you want to show up and just come hang out, and that's probably where you're going to meet the most amount of military, like-minded military people doing social media stuff and putting out information like this, and some of the other ones as well, but we won't talk about them. The ones that are getting paid billions,
right? Right.
Which is not me. I'm not getting paid billions to do this stuff. But yeah, thank you everybody out there for hanging out with us. All 28 of you, the dedicated ones, the ones that come and hang out with us every Sunday. If you need to check us out anywhere, you can find us everywhere online. Pretty much every corner of the internet, you can find us. Military Retirement Podcast. You can also find the Green Logbook as well, Victor's separate YouTube channel, where he's documenting his retirement journey, doing a much better job of it than I tried to do when I first started doing the stuff. So he's doing good stuff out there. Be prepared for the book. If you haven't joined the Facebook group, the Military Retirement group on Facebook, and drop your email in there, and you'll be the first one to get a copy of that book. And it should be out really, really, really soon. Like, I'm gonna, as soon as Victor comes off of vacation, I'm gonna bomb his text messages so we can get this thing out.
Awesome.
So yeah, all that, and thank you everybody again for checking us out, sticking with us, hanging out. If you got any questions or anything, feel free to drop them in the comments. We'll both see them, and we will answer them whenever we get a chance. That's all I got, man.
All right.
Okay.
We'll catch you guys.
Everybody
on
have
the
a good
next-
Sunday. And yeah, definitely catch you later.